A lot of people start their New Year resolution around, obviously, January, sometimes even at the end of December. And that's fair, it works. But if you're someone that maybe you had your New Year's resolution and then January passed and you feel like you're not going towards your goals as well as you thought you would, this video is for you. Back in I want to say like 2020, like end of 2020, in December time, November, December time, this was when I was freelancing. So I was working a lot, and it got to a point where we needed to take some time and get away for a little bit. So we went to the south of Haiti, to this beautiful town that I just fell in love with. Honestly, it was cold, it was cozy, it was quiet, just everything came together for me to have time to, I would say, quiet my mind long enough to really think through the coming year. And as I was thinking through that and reflecting, what I now call the word of the year template came. And this guide basically was birthed out of that time of reflection. And so 2021 was the first year that I used it, where I had a word for the year, and now we're in 2026. So it's been some time since I've been using it. And over time, I've shared it with family and friends, and they've used it as well and have loved it. And so this is kind of this video, basically we're going to talk about a few of the sections in there, why this guide is a bit different and different than maybe something that you've worked on before. We'll talk about the different sections, and then we'll talk about kind of the why behind those sections. So we'll talk about gratitude, we'll talk about becoming, we'll talk about goals, and we'll talk about faith. So in terms of gratitude, obviously there are a lot of reasons why practicing gratitude is a good thing. From a psychology perspective, it's good for better mental health in general, improved sleep, reduce stress and anxiety, greater emotional resilience. All of those things are benefits of practicing gratitude. But also, in terms of scripture and what it teaches us, this is very fundamental. In 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 18, it says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." So research talks about how important gratitude is. Scripture talks about how important gratitude is. So how do you actually practice gratitude? There are a few things that I do or that I've noticed are helpful. One of those things is journaling. And this is something that a lot of people recommend as well. I remember there was this one season in my life where things were really hard. I mean, things were hard in general, but for some reason they were hitting me differently. My anxiety levels were high. My creativity was at an all-time low. Like, I'm someone who loves to create. Like, I wake up and I want to create. So the fact that I wasn't taking any photos or just making anything for days, that was very alarming. And so one of the things that a friend of mine gave me, and when she gave it, it was just a beautiful coincidence slash just a beautiful gift. She gave me a journal and a gratitude journal. Basically, there were 7 lines, and basically every day you have to write things that you're grateful for, and you have to fill out those 7 different prompts and lines. At first, it was really hard. Write stuff like, I'm grateful because I had Julie and Soswat today. Like, it was very basic, and I was just like, I don't, whatever. But then the more I did it, the more I started to really connect and really have so much to be grateful for, that the 7 lines were not enough and I would run out. And as I was doing that too, and of course with therapy and with a lot of other things, it just helped to get me better. Things didn't change. The situation didn't change. Haiti didn't change, but just internally, I was more resilient and more able to kind of face those challenges. So, journaling, highly recommend. The second thing, and this is not something that I personally practice, but I was doing this workshop once, and especially a workshop on gratitude actually, and one of the participants is like, hey, like, this is something that I do. So she records voice notes, and this is her way of tracking kind of what she's grateful for the day and things like that. I thought that was really cool. So hey, if it connects with you and if you want to do it, go for it. The last thing I would say, it's not the last thing, a third, I would say, way of practicing gratitude that I've personally done and really enjoyed is vlogs and photographs and things like that. So on Instagram, like, I'll post a bunch of things that are going on in my life, things that I'm grateful for. And yes, it's for the benefit of people who are going to see the videos, and see the photos, but mostly it's for my own personal gratitude gallery. Instagram has become one of those things where it's a collection of the things that I'm grateful for. And so sometimes I'll just go back and watch old stuff just because they're reminders of, oh, this is what I remember that day. This is something incredible that happened that day. Or this is something that I went through. This was the season, and this would... Anyway, you get the point. So things that I've done, places I've traveled to, people I've met, all of that collection of memories is my way of practicing gratitude. And in the word of the year, there's a specific section that says celebration and Thanksgiving for the past year. So it has 4 different boxes, and so you can have 4 different things that when you're reflecting on that whole year, and you're like, okay, here are 4 major things that happened last year that I'm really, really grateful for. And you can expand on those things. And this section is very important because if you think about it, once you start doing it year after year, and this has happened to me, I start looking at kind of patterns and seeing things that have happened in this year, and then this year, and then this year, things that I've... It's just beautiful, and it can get very emotional when you think about all the stuff that God has done for you, all the stuff that you've been blessed with. It's a really great section, and if you can fill it out personally and then share it with a group of friends, group of trusted people, your inner circle, family, and all of you can share together what has happened, especially if you've done life with them for a while. It gets to be one of those moments that are very, again, emotional, because we're like, I know what you've gone through, and to see kind of how we're celebrating together what has happened is just a beautiful moment. So highly encourage you to not only fill out the word of the year for yourself, but to share those different sections with your trusted inner circle. It just makes it even more special. So in terms of becoming, how would I say this? We tend to think, especially when we're task oriented. I'm a task oriented person. I know of a lot of people who are task oriented. It's just like, go, go, go. Here's what I want to accomplish. Here's what I want to do. And it is great. And there'll be a section for that. But before we even go to that, one of the things that I've learned, and actually I learned this by reading one of John Mark Comer's books, and where he was talking about the importance of becoming, like the journey is just as important as the destination. So who are you becoming is an important part of the things that you'll be accomplishing. So this section is specifically important because it talks about and forces you to go into reflection mode. How do you want to be transformed? So Romans 12 verse 2 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So who you become is an important aspect of what you'll end up doing. And we'll talk more about kind of how to answer that question. And it's a little bit of a hard question, especially if you're beginning to think through these things. But there are 3 questions I would say that can help you kind of assess who you are now and help you think through who you want to become. So first question, what is driving me right now? Clarity or image? Another question, am I trustworthy when no one is watching? And finally, what pressures are shaping my inner life right now? When you think through those questions, it can help you think about the person that you are now. And now when you go into the section in the Word of the Year that talks about who I want to become in the coming year, then you have 3 different prompts or boxes. Who do you want to become? It can be maybe this year you're thinking about, oh, I want to be someone that's patient. I want to be an author. I want to be a journalist. I want to be a creative. I want to be joyful. Whatever those things are for you, sit in silence and reflection. If you're in relationship with God, then ask him specifically for that, specifically to help you understand who it is that he wants you to be. Now, let's talk about goals, right? So, story time. When we were renovating the house, things were hard. Renovations are hard in general. Renovations in Haiti are hard. There was so much work to be done, and there were times where we got a lot done, and then as we're like cleaning up, we're cleaning up, and then suddenly something goes wrong, and it's like you have to start over. It's really it's really frustrating. It's really hard. Like you feel like there's no end. And one of the things that really helped me was a friend's advice. She was going through renovations and she was launching her business as well in that same season. She told me, listen, have an end date like a launch date. Like just write it down, set it up, and just pick a date. Pick a date where you're launching instead of just, whenever we're done with work, then we'll launch. And she was right. As soon as I started putting together flyers, sending out invitations for a big opening, the pressure started growing, but the focus also started growing. Luke 14 verse 28 says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? Essentially, it's important to sit down and look at where you want to go before you actually go there. And so that's how we were able to go from being super busy, like day in and day out in renovations, to launching Kayasa and having, we had a prayer on Thursday, a cocktail party on Friday, and then our big open house on Saturday. And we got to do it because we set out goals. Like, I was able to set out goals, and I learned a lot from that experience. But the other thing is that there are goals and there are SMART goals. And SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, they're time bound. And it's so important for us to have specificity when we think about what we want to achieve. There are three things that help in terms of goals that we're setting up and that we're goals that we're thinking about. So having a deadline. Okay, I want to take this course by XYZ, you know? A clear outcome. If you want to take the course, like you want to, if it's a fake graduation or a certificate that you're getting, you want to get that certificate, that's a clear outcome. That says, I will know that I've accomplished this by XYZ. And finally, habit. Having goals is great, but if they're not part of your day to day, the likelihood that you will accomplish them is zero or very close to zero. Not zero, but very close. So having habits, so basically putting in time in your weekly schedule to make sure that those goals are turned into habits, that's gonna set you up for success. So in the word of the year, there's a section on goals, and there are different, I would say, focuses. There's your spiritual walk, money and finances, health and wellness, business, career, ministry, life, work, school, whatever. Different sections that you can kind of shape into your own. But what's most important and what I'm really excited about is the fact that this year we printed a version of this guide, and the print version is in French, and it has a schedule portion, like a weekly schedule section that's different from the one on Ocean, because it's important to turn our goals into habits. So how do we do that? First, you set up your weekly calendar with your regular routine. So work, school, lunch, breakfast, sleep time, leisure, whatever it is that's very important to you. And that's kind of non-negotiable. Like, you have to do those things. And then the second thing is that you select a SMART goal. You had your list of goals for the year. You select one, and you do that for every single one. And of course, that might mean kind of prioritizing the ones that are most important to you. But you select a SMART goal, and then you find a 2-hour slot in your weekly calendar to work towards that goal. So after everything that's non-negotiable in your schedule is set, then you take some time and you add. For example, if your goal was to complete a specific course, then you set those 2 hours in your weekly schedule to work towards that. And it could be 2 hours, it could be an hour, it depends on the task and the habit. But the point is that you turn your goal into a habit. And this guide that I talked about, it is available, some of it, limited, in limited quantity, available at Kayasa in Haiti. But you can also download it directly in our link, the link for the template, word of the year. So, yeah, finally, let's talk about faith. James 2, verse 17 says, in the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. And I wanted to talk specifically about faith because that's something that I've learned, especially last year. I learned how important it is to do everything that depends on me and to do it well, and to trust God for the things that I cannot and would not even imagine doing. There are things that I control, and it is my responsibility to do them well. And the things that I can't control, it is my responsibility to trust God with for them and for those things. The word of the year template is one of those things where you will have goals, you will have project management sections, and very actionable steps to take to set your year up for success. But there's a section specifically on prayer requests because praying is acknowledging the fact that there are things that you can't control. You can plan your life as well as you'd like, but the things that you can't control, you leave them up to God and you ask for His help, for Him to intervene. So, how to pray? How do you pray? I know it feels like a basic question, but it's also a question that is very, very important. And I've kind of broken it down into different levels. And it's not because of how hard they are necessarily, but because of it's more in terms of I, you'll see what I mean. So the first level I would say is beginner, and I say beginner because of how accessible it is. So we, in general, we are familiar with the idea of writing. So writing letters, writing in our journals, etc. So writing can be and reading can be a very accessible way of starting the practice of prayer. When I think about the Psalms and the Psalms that David wrote, a lot of it is him processing with God and like writing his thoughts, his emotions on paper, or us reading, and while we're reading, we're kind of connecting with those words that are on paper. So for me, it's not how I started to pray, but it's something that I've learned to do and that I love doing. So it's not beginner because it's not at the beginner level because it's only for beginner Christians, but it's at the beginner level because it's so accessible and easy to start with. And so think about it like writing letters to someone. Writing prayers is can be a fun and surprisingly intimate way of connecting with God. And then, of course, there's intermediate, I would say talking. But the talking part isn't just, it's going to be kind of your, the regular, probably the most common way that people think when they think about prayer. But there's also the talking as in you're constantly like chatting with God throughout the day. And talking can be vocal, where your voice comes out, but it can be internal as well. And it can be for big things, it can be for small things as well. So that part is, again, a discipline that you get better with with time. And finally, what I would say is the advanced level would be listening. Reason why I say it's advanced is because it's easier to talk than to listen in general, even in a conversation. And so being able to listen to God and practicing the presence of God, practicing listening to what He has to say And not just listening, but once you listen, there'll probably be some homework that you need to do and actually obeying what he says you should do. That's a practice that's hard that I'm still working on. I've been a Christian since I was 5 years old, so I've learned to pray even before that. So I would say that it is still a practice and there's still so much to learn, but it is a beautiful practice and I couldn't imagine my life without prayer. And so in the word of the year, in the prayer section, there are prompts for prayer requests, and there are no limits. And the prayer requests in this prayer section, it's for you, but it's also for people. So you have prayer points for yourself, for your life, for etc. But also you can use that section to pray for friends and family or issues that really you feel like this is something that you have no control over and that you leave to God. And so you can write out the prayer requests, you can write out specifics. It's always helpful to have kind of specific prayers like, hey, Lord, I would like this, this, and this. It doesn't mean that just because you write the specifics, it's going to come out exactly how you want, but it's good to pray for specifics. I remember one of my prayers back in 2017 or so. I was praying for an apartment, and I prayed specifically for an apartment with a washer and dryer indoors because I was in the Massachusetts area and I did not want to go outside in the snow or in the cold every time I needed to wash my clothes. So it's super random and super basic, but I was like, this is my prayer. And the Lord answered, and when he answered and I saw the answer, the fact that it was so specific, it just made the testimony and the experience even more special. So I'm all for specific prayers, and I encourage you to as well. And then in that section, there's also the answer section. So it could be, there are so many varied answers. It could be, hey, let it go. And you pray for something, and then God is like, let this go. Or it could be a yes, and you can write the date when the prayer was answered and notes about like how the prayer was answered. Perhaps it was answered in a way that's very different from the specifics that you had written, but it is still answered, and that's still beautiful. And so, or it could be keep praying. And so at the end of the year, when you look through and you're like, this hasn't been answered, but God hasn't said not to keep praying for it, so you keep on going. Whatever it is, I really hope that you found this video helpful and that the word of the year, you understand the word of the year template a little bit better and are able to use it for yourself, maybe with family and friends, and that yes, even though the year has already started and we're already at our second month in this year, that you are still able to start your year right and set it up for success.